My wife of 10 years cheated with our neighbor, stole $250, $0 from our joint account, and then arranged a fake divorce to claim our family home worth $500, $0. Now she's suing me for custody and everything to keep the money and house, and I feel completely betrayed. I never thought I'd be the guy standing here, completely by everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about Lisa. We'd been together for 10 years, married for 8, and I always believed we had a solid life, a future. She was the kind of wife who seemed perfect on the outside, beautiful, successful, charming. But then again, I guess I should known better. Sometimes the signs are there, but you brush them off until they hit you like a freight train. It started about 6 months ago. Little things, you know. She'd be more distant, more secretive. Her phone would be glued to her hand, and she'd get defensive whenever I asked about her texts or calls. She'd go out with her friends more often, but I noticed she was spending a lot of time on her phone afterward, texting some guy named Jake. I didn't think much of it at first. People cheat, right? Happens all the time. I figured maybe she was just having some fun, or maybe I was overthinking it. Then came the money. Our joint account, which I'd always trusted her with, suddenly had strange withdrawals, small at first, then bigger. I'd check the bank statements and I'd see charges I didn't recognize: luxury hotels, expensive dinners, shopping sprees. I remember one particular night, I sat down with the statement and saw a transfer of $50, $0 to an account I'd never heard of. My stomach dropped. I called the bank and they told me it was a wire transfer from our account to some private account. I asked who authorized it and they said only Lisa had done it. That was the moment I started to get suspicious. But I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I decided to do some digging. I wanted to be sure before I accused her of anything. I started looking through her phone, her emails. I found texts between her and Jake, flirty, suggestive messages. Nothing explicit, but enough to tell me they'd been seeing each other. Then I found the photos. A bunch of them, Lisa and Jake in bed at some hotel. She sent him a nude and he'd replied with some sick comment about how she looked so hot. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The woman I loved, the mother of my kids, was cheating on me with our neighbor. I felt sick. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. I'd always thought Lisa was honest, loyal. Turns out she was a liar and a cheat. I didn't know what to do first: cry, scream, or just sit there in shock. Instead, I took screenshots of everything, printed out the evidence. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to be prepared. I needed to hear her explain herself, but deep down, I knew nothing she said could fix what was broken. The next day, I called her into the living room. She was acting normal, like nothing was wrong. Her makeup was perfect, her smile was fake, and her eyes had that little flicker of guilt I'd seen before. I laid the evidence out on the table: the texts, the photos, the bank statements. Her face immediately turned pale, but she tried to play it off, saying I was paranoid, that I'd misunderstood, that Jake meant nothing. She told me she'd been stressed, that I wasn't paying enough attention to her, that she needed someone who made her feel alive again. She said she loved me, but she needed this, something she felt she was missing. I listened, but inside I felt like I was dying. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray everything we built? I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I looked into her eyes and saw the woman I'd trusted for a decade, but all I could see now was a stranger. The woman who had stolen my money, cheated on me, and then had the nerve to sit there and deny everything. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see how much she'd hurt me, but I just sat there numb, trying to process what I'd uncovered. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I was furious, devastated, and confused. I loved her, but I also hated her. I kept thinking about the money: 250, gone from our joint account, stolen just like that. And the house, our family home worth $500,000 she'd arranged. Some fake divorce to get it all. That's when I realized this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about betrayal on a scale I'd never imagined. She planned this probably for months. She wanted everything: my money, our house, the life we built, and she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate to get it. I knew I couldn't just let her walk away with everything. I had to fight back. I had to figure out what to do next. But right now, I was just trying to breathe, trying to hold myself together. Deep down, I knew my life was never going to be the same after this. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything except the feeling of betrayal gnawing at me. Every time I saw her, Lisa would put on that fake smile, acting like everything was fine, like she hadn't just screwed me over in the worst way possible. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that Jake was just some guy she'd met at a party and that they'd been just talking. Yeah, right, I knew better. The way she looked at him in those texts. The photos she sent, those weren't just talk. She was deeply involved with him. I started digging into her phone more, trying to connect the dots. I needed to understand her motive, her next move. That's when I found out about the money. The $250, $0 she transferred out of our joint account gone. Disappeared. I called the bank again, demanded answers. Turns out she'd been funneling money into some secret account all along. The more I looked, the more I realized she'd planned this. She'd been sneaking around, stealing from us, and then she'd set up a fake divorce to claim our house, which she knew was worth a fortune. I felt rage bubble up inside me. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, steal from her own family? I'd worked hard for everything we had, and she was just throwing it all away for some guy and a quick cash grab. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with everything, was now just a stranger who had betrayed me in the worst way. I needed to confront her again, but this time I wanted to catch her in a lie, so I set a trap. I pretended to be okay, acting like I hadn't seen the evidence. I wanted her to slip up. I told her I was willing to work things out, that I wanted to hear her side. She looked relieved, too relieved, and started talking about how stressed she'd been, how she felt trapped, how she needed a change. She kept crying, saying she was sorry, that she loved me, but her words felt hollow. I knew she was lying. Then I asked her about the money. She hesitated, then blurted out some excuse about how she'd needed it for emergencies and that I shouldn't be so paranoid. That was when I snapped. I told her I knew she'd stolen it, that I had proof. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she said I was crazy, that I was overreacting. That's when she dropped a bombshell. She was planning to divorce me, to take everything, including the house, and leave me with nothing. She even had a lawyer ready to file. That was the punch in the gut I didn't see coming. She was serious. She'd already made arrangements. I started to realize this wasn't just some fling. This was a full-blown plan to take everything from me. My money, my house, my family. My mind raced. How could she do this? How could she betray me so completely? I felt sick, angry, and helpless all at once. I decided I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with it. I started gathering evidence, screenshots, bank statements, messages. I wanted to make sure I had everything documented. I also reached out to a lawyer. I needed legal advice, and I needed it fast. The lawyer told me I had a strong case because of the forged documents, the hidden accounts, and the stolen money. She warned me that Lisa might try to play dirty, but I had the truth on my side. The thought of fighting for my rights, for my house and my money, was terrifying but necessary. In the meantime, I installed some hidden cameras around the house, just in case she did something I could catch. I didn't trust her anymore. Every time she left the house, I would check her phone, her emails, her social media. I was paranoid, but I had to be. I couldn't let her walk away with everything after what she'd done. I also started talking to some friends, asking for advice, trying to keep my head clear. The most frustrating part was watching her try to pretend everything was normal. She'd tease the kids, cook dinner, act like she still loved me, but I saw through it. I knew she was planning her next move. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, waiting for the inevitable moment when everything would explode. I kept telling myself I had to stay strong, that I had to fight this. I couldn't let her destroy me, my family, everything we'd built. I was determined to get justice, even if it meant tearing everything apart first. One thing was clear. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for money and her own gain. The betrayal was one thing. The fact that she'd gone this far to manipulate and lie made me realize I'd been blind for too long. I don't know what the future holds now, but I do know I won't be giving up without a fight. The legal process moved faster than I expected. I thought I'd have weeks, maybe months to prepare, but Lisa's sudden moved to file for divorce and claim the house changed everything. I got served papers just 2 days after I gathered all my evidence. It was like she'd already planned everything. She had a lawyer, a strategy, everything ready to go. I sat there staring at the documents, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. The divorce papers weren't just about separation. They were about her trying to take everything I had left. She was demanding custody of the kids, the house, and a fair share of the joint account, except, of course, she'd already drained most of it. I looked at the numbers 250, zero gone, the house worth $500,000, and her claims that I was an unfit father. It was sickening. I knew she was lying about everything, trying to spin the story to look like the victim, but I wasn't buying it. I had my proof and I was ready to fight. The worst part was her attitude. Lisa was cold, calculating, and bitchy. She kept insisting she was doing everything for the kids, that I was neglectful and abusive. Nothing could be further from the truth. I have always been there for them, but she spun her lies with such ease I started to question myself. Was I really a bad father? Did I miss something? No, I knew my kids loved me, and I knew I hadn't done anything to deserve her manipulations. I hired a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud and divorce cases. His name was Mark, and he was exactly what I needed. We went over everything. He told me that Lisa's entire case was based on lies and forged documents. The fake divorce papers, the fake signatures. She tried to make it look legit, but we had evidence proving otherwise. Mark explained that we could challenge her claims, that I had a solid chance of getting the court to see through her deception. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet publicly, but behind the scenes I was working nonstop. I subpoenaed bank records, subpoenaed her phone records, and started building a case that showed her entire scheme. I also hired a private investigator to follow her, just to confirm her whereabouts and activities. It was unsettling to see her sneaking around, meeting with her lawyer, trying to hide her tracks. But I also knew that I had to stay calm and focus on the fight ahead. Losing my temper or rushing into anything would only hurt my case. One of the most shocking revelations came from the investigator's report. Lisa had been meeting with Jake, our neighbor, more than I thought. They'd been spotted at a hotel, and she'd even been seen leaving his house late at night. That confirmed everything I'd suspected. She wasn't just cheating. She was actively planning her escape, using him as her accomplice. I felt a mix of disgust and rage. How could she do this to her own family? How could she lie and manipulate her way to everything she wanted? The custody battle was brutal. Lisa painted herself as the victim, claiming I was abusive and neglectful. She hired her own set of lawyers, hired a psychologist to prove I was unfit, and tried to turn the kids against me. But I had my own witnesses, friends and family who could vouch for my character. I also had recordings of her admitting to the affair, her plans to steal the house, and her financial schemes. The court started to see through her lies, but it was a slow process. Throughout it all, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I was angry at her, devastated for my children, and helpless against her manipulations. Every day brought new surprises, more lies, more sneaky moves. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could turn into such a cold, calculating thief and liar. I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. The betrayal cut so deep I wasn't sure I'd ever recover from it. But I also started to realize that I wasn't just fighting for my money or my house. I was fighting for my dignity, for my reputation, and for my kids' future. Lisa wasn't going to get away with this without consequences. I knew I had the truth on my side, and I was determined to see justice done, no matter how long it took. Every day was a battle, but I refused to be broken. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. The court hearings came faster than I expected, and when they did, it felt like stepping into a battlefield. Lisa showed up with her smug little lawyer, trying to look innocent and hurt, but I knew better. I had everything laid out: bank statements, the forged divorce papers, her texts, the photos of her with Jake, and the reports from my private investigator. I felt a strange calm knowing I had the evidence to back me up. Still, seeing her sit there, acting like she was the victim, made my stomach turn. The judge asked her questions about the allegations, and she gave her typical bitchy smirk, claiming she was misunderstood, that she loved the kids and only wanted what was best for them. She spun her lies so smoothly it was disgusting. She said she'd never stolen money, never cheated, and that I was just jealous or paranoid. I almost laughed. Jealous? Of her lying and cheating? Yeah, right. I knew she was trying to paint herself as the innocent wife who'd been betrayed, but I had the proof that said otherwise. My lawyer, Mark, laid out our case clearly. He played the recordings of Lisa admitting to her affair with Jake, and he presented the bank statements showing the stolen $250, $0. We showed the fake divorce papers, the forged signatures, and the evidence that Lisa had been planning all along to take the house and the money. The judge was surprised at how well prepared we were, and I could see her starting to see through Lisa's lies. Meanwhile, Lisa's lawyer tried to dismiss everything, claiming my evidence was hearsay or irrelevant, but the judge wasn't buying it. She ordered Lisa to produce her bank records, her phone, and her lawyer's files for review. That was a victory for us, but I knew this was just the beginning. Lisa's side was fighting dirty, trying to manipulate the court, trying to make me look bad. But I refused to back down. The custody hearing was the most emotional part. I sat there watching Lisa pretend to be the caring mother, while I knew she was planning to manipulate the kids and use them as pawns. I had my own witnesses, teachers, friends, and even a neighbor who that I was a good father, that I always put the kids first, and that Lisa had been acting strange lately. It wasn't enough to completely sway the court yet, but it was a start. The psychologist she hired tried to paint me as emotionally unstable, claiming I was unfit to have custody. But I had my own psychologist, who that I was a stable, loving father. The court was starting to see through her facade, but I knew Lisa wouldn't give up easily. She was desperate to keep the house and the money, and she'd do anything to win. I was exhausted, angry, but also relieved that I had some solid support. As the hearings wrapped up, I felt a strange mixture of hope and dread. Hope because I knew I had the truth on my side, and dread because I was facing a long, messy fight. Lisa was scheming, lying, and trying to manipulate the system, but I was determined not to let her get away with it. I'd fought hard to gather all this evidence, and I was ready to go all the way to make sure justice was served. What stuck with me most was her attitude, how she acted like she was the victim, like I was the one who betrayed her. That fake bitchy smile, her manipulative tears, it made me sick. I kept telling myself I'd do whatever it took to protect my kids and my rights. The truth was on my side, and I wasn't going to let her take everything I worked for, my house, my money, my family. This was only the beginning, but I knew I'd fight to the end. I had to. The aftermath of the court hearings was a whirlwind. I felt like I'd been run over by a truck, but at the same time, I knew I had gained some ground. The judge's preliminary rulings were in my favor. She ordered Lisa to provide full disclosure of her finances and to cease any further attempts to transfer or hide assets. That was a huge relief, but I knew it was only a temporary victory. Lisa was still scheming, and I had to stay one step ahead. I kept my focus on the bigger picture, getting the justice I deserved and protecting my kids from her manipulations. I spent hours working with my lawyer, Mark, going over every detail of the case, planning our next moves. Lisa's lawyer kept trying to undermine us, claiming that Lisa was the victim of my abuse and that I was trying to control her. I couldn't believe her audacity. I had the evidence of her affair, her theft, and her lies, but she was trying to spin it all into some narrative of victimhood. One day, I found out that Lisa had tried to secretly transfer the house into her sister's name. I was furious. That's when I decided I had to take more drastic measures. I filed a motion for a temporary restraining order to freeze all her assets, including the house, until the case was resolved. The court granted it, which meant she couldn't sell or transfer anything without my approval. It was a small victory, but it felt good knowing I was stopping her from doing any more damage. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the emotional toll. The kids sensed the tension, and I tried to be as strong and supportive as possible. I explained to them that Mom was going through some problems, but that I loved them and would always be there for them. It was heartbreaking to see the confusion in their eyes, but I knew honesty was the best way. I kept telling myself that I was fighting for their future, for their stability. Lisa's behavior became more erratic. She started showing up at the house unannounced, trying to manipulate the kids into turning against me. She'd cry, scream, or try to guilt-trip them, claiming I was a bad father who was trying to keep them from her. I recorded some of her outbursts just in case I needed evidence later. I wasn't about to let her gaslight my kids or turn them against me. I stayed calm, firm, and always put their needs first. The worst part was realizing how deep her lies went. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was the one who had betrayed her, even though I had all the proof of her affair and theft. Her obsession with keeping the house and the money was clear. She'd gone so far as to hire her own private investigator, probably to dig up dirt on me or find some way to manipulate the court further. I knew she was dangerous, and I had to be even more careful. At this point, I felt like I was fighting a war on two fronts, legally and emotionally. I was exhausted, but I refused to give up. Every day I reminded myself that justice might take time, but it would come. I had to stay strong for my kids, for myself, because I knew if I broke down, she'd win. The betrayal cut so deep I didn't think I'd ever fully recover, but I was determined to see this through. Looking back, I realized the biggest lesson I've learned is to trust your instincts and never ignore the little signs. I should seen her lies earlier, but I was blinded by love. Now I know that sometimes the truth is hidden behind a smile or a fake apology. And when someone betrays you this deeply, you have to fight for what's right, even if it costs everything. I don't know how this will end, but I do know I won't stop until I've fought for my family's future and made her face the consequences of her actions. After months of fighting tooth and nail, I finally saw some real progress. The court's final ruling was a blow to Lisa. She was ordered to pay back the stolen money, and the house was awarded to me. The judge saw through her manipulations, her lies, and her blatant attempts to cheat her way out of everything. She wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing she could do now. The legal battle had exposed her for the scheming, selfish woman she truly was. When the judge signed the final papers, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd fought so hard, sacrificed so much, and in the end I'd won the legal war. But the emotional scars remained. My trust was shattered, and I knew I'd carry these wounds for a long time. Still, I was grateful that I could finally move forward, rebuild what I could, and protect my kids from her influence. Lisa's reaction was as expected. She threw a fit, screaming and crying in court, trying to manipulate everyone around her. But her attempts at guilt-tripping failed. The court saw her for what she really was, a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. She left the courtroom furious, vowing she'd come after me again, but I knew better now. I'd learned to see through her lies and to stand my ground. The aftermath was tough. Lisa moved out of the house, but her presence still haunted me. I had to change locks, secure all our financial accounts, and keep a close watch on her movements. I also took steps to rebuild my relationship with my kids, making sure they understood that I loved them and that I'd always protect them from her schemes. It was easy trusting again, especially after all the lies, but I was determined to be the father they needed. Financially, I was left to pick up the pieces. The stolen money was recovered, but the emotional damage was harder to repair. I had to start over, rebuild my savings, and focus on providing a stable environment for my children. The house was a fresh start, a place where I could finally breathe and begin healing. I learned a lot from this nightmare, about trust, betrayal, and the importance of watching out for red flags. Looking back, I can say that I've come out of this stronger. I never thought I'd face something so devastating, but it taught me to value honesty and integrity above all. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself and your family, even when it feels overwhelming. The pain of betrayal will never fully go away, but I've found a way to move forward, more cautious, more aware, but also more resilient. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, my biggest advice is this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. The truth might hurt, but it's always better than living in a lie. And never forget, no matter how bad it gets, there's always a way out, a path to justice, and a chance to start over. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity, strength, and a new appreciation for what truly matters.